Thank you very much, Ms. Danae. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so please allow me to share my screen. Can you see it? Yeah.
Yes, sir. We can see your screen.
Okay. So, okay, thank you very much again, Ms. Danae, for the introduction. Firstly, I want to thank the UP Asian Center for, particularly Professor Roy Talampas, for this invitation. I think it's a very timely webinar about China. To my distinguished co-panelists, Chancellor Nemenzo, Dean Santarita, to the attendees, a very good afternoon to you all. So my presentation, which is about political connectivity, a new dimension of China's Belt and Road Initiative in the Philippines, is based on a working paper that I recently wrote for RSIS. I opted to present this paper because much has been said about the South China Sea, Chinese investments in the Philippines, and I think the aspect of party-to-party relations remain an under-discussed topic in the Philippines. And so I'll start by first giving you a background of China's party-to-party diplomacy. Second, the strategic imperatives of China's party-to-party diplomacy. Third, the institutionalization of China's party-to-party diplomacy in the Philippines. And fourth, the implications of China's party-to-party diplomacy for Philippine domestic politics. Okay, so firstly, on the first, on some background about China's P2P diplomacy. Okay, so I think we first have to understand what the Belt and Road Initiative is about. Now, the Belt and Road Initiative is a regional integration project by China. It's a pet project of Chinese President Xi Jinping, which was announced in 2013. It basically aims to connect regions across the world through various policy issue areas. And these are, in particular, hard infrastructure, ports, airports, railways, roads, bridges, energy stations, industrial zones, oil and gas pipelines, among others, and also soft infrastructure like telecommunications, people-to-people exchanges, and economic and financial cooperation. So this is the Belt and Road Initiative. And we would notice that since President Duterte took office, Philippines-China relations, reached an all-time high because there was the leveling up of bilateral ties to comprehensive strategic cooperation, and so party-to-party relations have blossomed between the Communist Party of China and various Philippine political parties, especially President Duterte's political party, where he serves as chairman, and that is PDP Laban. So this is in stark contrast to the time of President Benigno Aquino, which saw no formal, I'm saying formal, party-to-party exchanges and limited high-level engagements because of the tensions in the West Philippine Sea. Okay, so China's party-to-party engagements, this is nothing new because these have been used by China to marshal external support during the revolutionary days of the CPC and to help consolidate China's independence after the founding of the PRC in 1949. And they also used party-to-party engagements to construct an international environment conducive to economic modernization since their economic reform and opening up in 1978. So you have to understand that in China's political system, it's the party that's basically, that holds the power. And they do not only command the gun, the military, but also the state. And so this is why, the small leading group of foreign affairs, which became Committee for Foreign Affairs in 2018, is under the auspices of the Communist Party. And they have more power. Party institutions have more power than state institutions like the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And this is obvious because the head of the Committee for Foreign Affairs is led by a Politburo member, Yang Jiechi. And this same committee, they coordinate and supervise the overseas work of all party, government, and military agencies. Okay, so here, this is also especially that, the 14 basic policy 14-point basic policy of presidency, or the Xi Jinping thought, states that the party should, assume leadership over all work. And so we can say that since the party does this work, this is like China's parliamentary diplomacy. And the party organ in charge of China's party-to-party diplomacy is the IDCPC, or the International Department of the Communist Party of China Central Committee. And among the functional roles of the IDCPC is to collect information on political developments overseas and provide policy recommendations to the Central Committee and the Politburo Standing Committee. Here on the right, this photo would show you, the hierarchy of China's party system. You see here the Central Committee, the IDCPC provides recommendations to the Central Committee and to as high as the Politburo Standing Committee. And of course, the boss of all this is the party general secretary, which is Chinese President Xi Jinping. President Xi's power emanates not from him being the Chinese president, but from him being the party general secretary. Okay, so second, we go to the strategic imperatives of China's party-to-party diplomacy. So basically, China's party-to-party diplomacy, gives China a new diplomatic layer apart from media diplomacy, think tank diplomacy, and military diplomacy, to promote bilateral relations with several countries, and to also complement confidence-building measures being done through traditional channels, or through government channels. And if you would notice, the membership of this party-to-party diplomacy delegations would include high-level members of provincial party committees and governments. And their activities include conference diplomacy, party dialogues, training, visiting programs, and sponsorships of overseas party schools. In fact, in 2017, Presidency announced that 15,000 party members from around the world should be brought to China within the next 5 years. And in relation to this, IDCPC has already built a global network with more than 600 political parties in over 160 countries. And they receive and send off more than 300 delegations each year. So you can just see how much resources or, attention they put into party-to-party diplomacy. So as for their priority engagements, basically, number one, China engages with those countries that are ideologically aligned with them. These are socialist countries like Cuba, North Korea, Vietnam, Laos, and in countries where they have strategic foreign policy interests, like those in Cambodia, Sub-Saharan Africa. And at the same time, they've also engaged with European countries, OECD members, and those in Latin America. But then, a study finds that they are most active in Asia, and that's not surprising because China puts a lot of premium on their periphery, on their neighborhood. So here, China has established the CPC, with the new Communist Party of Japan, Democratic Party of Japan, political parties in South Korea, Mongolia, Malaysia, South Asia, and of course the Philippines. In fact, there is even a mechanism between China and Japan, for their parties. And it's not just bilateral party-to-party diplomacy that China employs, but also multilateral party diplomacy, because they also work with organizations like ICAP, International Conference of Asian Political Parties. Now, this entity was founded by a Filipino, no less than former Speaker Jose de Venecia. Okay, and so with this party-to-party diplomacy, China is able to cultivate relationships and gain indirect access to political elites, high-level decision makers, and power brokers of future leaders. As the IDCPC describes it, many state leaders, before they assume office, had already been China's friends. After they assume office, they have made active efforts in advancing friendship with China. And also the CPC can, through P2P diplomacy, the CPC can familiarize itself with the role of the opposition in various countries. And it allows China, they can articulate their political narratives, maximize their agenda-setting powers, and show their side of the story. In terms, for example, when they talk of their political model, their developmental path, experience, their ideological orientation, their governance theories, like the Xi Jinping thought, their policy positions on Taiwan, Tibet, Xinjiang, South China Sea, global governance reform, UN-centered international system, among others, and their policy priorities, 5-year plans, the Belt and Road Initiative, the Chinese Dream. So all of this they can do with party-to-party diplomacy. And on the third, how is it being institutionalized in the Philippines? So actually, China's party-to-party diplomacy with the Philippines is nothing new. The Chinese have been engaging Philippine political parties, since the early 2000s, and in fact, they've engaged with the Liberal Party, Lakas, CMD, NPC, LDP, PNP. So this is basically nothing new. But what's new is this. Under President Duterte, it's unprecedented because number one, there is the establishment of formal ties through the signing of an MOU. Now, previously, there was no MOU with any of those political parties that I just mentioned. And secondly, party-to-party diplomacy has been incorporated, under the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative. So this is why I am saying it is unprecedented. And since President Duterte came to power, there has been more than 10 occasions of interaction between the CPC, and Philippine political parties. And this involved, PDP Laban sending delegations to China for training as party cadres and immersion programs about the CPC's internal systems, the importance of party schools, party discipline, and anti-corruption efforts. And so what are the highlights of these engagements? So as I said, MOU has been signed. That was in 2017. It's to enhance high-level interaction, periodic exchange visits, training cooperation, study groups, youth and local leaders, to enhance the communication of youth and local leaders. In 2016, there was an agreement for PDP party members to receive policy training at the provincial party school in Fujian province. And Senate President Pimentel led two delegations to China. And one is the BRICS, Political Parties, Think Tanks, and Civil Society Organizations Forum, which was held in Fuzhou. There was also the CPC in dialogue with world political parties in Beijing. So that's in December 2017. And the agenda here is basically the attendees endorsed the BRI and the Beijing Initiative, or the pledge of support for China's vision for the world, the community of shared future for mankind, and the Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, or a China that is now assuming a more active role on the world stage. So Senator Pimentel also led a delegation to Xiamen in 2017, and the agenda was party building cooperation with senior CPC officials. In 2017, he also led the delegation to visit the Central Party School in Beijing, and this is where Chinese party officials are being trained on governance and public administration. And notably, the delegation to Beijing included Senator Manny Pacquiao, now the PDP Laban president, who is known to be considering a run for higher office. And here on the other side, the Chinese engagements with the Philippines. One is in January 2018, when Meng Xiangfeng, Executive Deputy Secretary of the Work Committee under the CPC and IDCPC, had a dialogue with PDP Laban about China's 19th Party Congress, and they gave out hundreds of copies of first volume of President Xi's book, and he also had a meeting with President Duterte. Following that, in March 2018, Vice Minister Goya Zhou was invited as guest speaker during the 36th anniversary celebration of PDP Laban. So there, the second volume of President Xi's book were donated to PDP Laban, 600 copies. And it was there where Senator Pimentel remarked that it's high time to understand the path, concept, and model of China's development, and study the CPC's experience when it comes to things like poverty alleviation efforts. So basically, the message here is that the PDP seems to now absorb that there is a need to learn from China's non-liberal democratic approaches. And in March 2019, another Chinese delegation led by IDCPC Minister Song Tao, he met with President Duterte, discussed the Build program in the South China Sea. And following that, a few months later, September 2019, it was Chen Min-er, a Politburo member, high-level ranking official in China, Chongqing Party Secretary, and he is a known protege of President Xi Jinping. So he met with various Philippine political parties, PDP Laban, Nacionalista, NUP, NPC, Lakas, and he also met with President Duterte and Davao Mayor Sara Duterte. So in there, they talked about investment opportunities, sister city agreements, big data, smart technology, logistics cooperation. So this is demonstrative of how the CPC links Chinese local actors like provinces and municipalities with business interests overseas. So in December 2019, PDP Laban took part in a CPC virtual briefing, and it's about China's modernization of China's system and capacity for governance forum. In fact, the IDCPC, they have done it with Indonesia and Thailand. So they held the first, this is what I'm saying, that this is now part of the Belt and Road. They held the first China-Philippines political parties Belt and Road consultation mechanism in June 2020. And this was attended by PDP Laban, NP, NPC, Party List Coalition, Foundation. And the emphasis of the meeting was, economic cooperation, Belt and Road, regional stability, One China policy, community of shared future for mankind, exchange of experiences, and the role of political parties in promoting bilateral ties. And in October 2020, November 2020, the PDP Laban also took part in an online seminar on poverty eradication and responsibility of political parties, CPC dialogue in political parties of Southeast Asian countries. So it is, in these platforms where Minister Song Tao gave update about China's economic strategy, like the dual circulation strategy. So yes, I'm saying this is new because the BRI only has 5 main pillars. It's only policy coordination, facilities connectivity, trade and investment, financial integration, and cultural exchange. So with the creation of the new mechanism, that shows that is the most political aspect yet of the BRI. So in addition, other engagements of the CPC with the Philippines, an in-person meeting was held between IDCPC Minister Song Tao and Senator Pimentel. Senator Pimentel went to Xiamen in September 2020. They talked about COVID-19, the usual things, community of shared future, BRI, opposition to power politics, management of maritime disputes. And this was also here where Senator Pimentel was given the 3rd volume of President Xi's book. So noticeably in these engagements, what you'd notice is that unlike the US, which often talks of liberal democratic norms like political and civil rights or democratic freedoms, China basically underscores economic interests and presents alternative political values and preferences. So with the greater interaction with the CPC, Senator Pimentel has recognized China as a world leader in e-commerce, digital banking, cashless society, financial technology, AI, renewable energy, railway technology, internet technology. He said that he's supportive of China breaking the monopoly of the US dollar. South China Sea does not define the sum total of Philippine-China relations, and that China's rise as a world leader should be welcome because he has believed in multipolarity, multilateralism, and he also believes that China will not seek hegemony. So because of these engagements, it's already the CPC that is the closest partner of PDP Laban, which were formerly German political parties. And he also suggested the creation of a Philippines-China Parliamentary Friendship Association. So lastly, the last part, I think it's clear that China's discourse and soft power has led to a more favorable view of China in the Philippines. P2P diplomacy gives China an opportunity to further its foreign policy objectives, expand political networks, and be familiar with local political environments. And they allow the CPC to link with political actors who hold key positions in Philippine political institutions. And some of them are close with President Duterte. And they can also spot up-and-coming politicians gets to hedge at the subnational level because they are now friends with many political parties. And this can work to China's favor in the event of political turmoil or any other disruptions in the Philippines. Yes. Sorry, I'm running out of time, so I'll rush. So this is the last slide. And this is important because, China's party-to-party diplomacy is consequential because political leaders can really shape public discourse and therefore impact policymaking. And, I think this notion needs to be corrected that, China is still a Cold War communist state in the Philippines because we also have a strategic partnership with Vietnam. And in fact, critics say that, China is no longer communist because they've already adopted, long abandoned Marxism in favor of free market principles. So as the 2022 Philippine national elections draw near, I think this is where we can test China's party-to-party diplomacy. And in the event that government-to-government relations have again bottomed out, this is where party-to-party diplomacy could be a platform to promote, to enhance relations between the two countries. And I will end here. Thank you very much and look forward to your questions and comments. Thank you.